Maryland basketball is drastically better in 2024.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app and create an account and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. I've also been doing work with InsideBlackandGold.net, so make sure you guys go over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. I don't think it's too early to say that Maryland basketball is drastically better in 2024 than it was in 2023. I think every part of our basketball team, when you look at it, and when I go over the components of a basketball team and what I've actually seen live now, it's not just me guessing, it's not just me predicting and projecting out. We've seen 3 games. And maybe I should wait until after the Marquette game to say that Marquette, we play on Friday night. Our biggest, probably our biggest out of conference game of the year. Definitely the biggest game so far on the year for Maryland basketball. A ranked opponent. They're ranked 15th in the country. They've done some pretty good things. I'm going to talk more about that on Friday before the game. But I think that Maryland basketball, what I've seen so far this year, and also just kind of my take on things and how I see this roster, this team is drastically better. Drastically. It's not even comparable, honestly. I think so much better than the collection of talent we had last year. I don't mean to joan on last year's team. I don't mean to put last year's team down. I know a lot of you guys just want to kind of put a nail in that and be done with what we did last year. But I'm still thinking about comparing last year. What went wrong? Is this team actually better? I've still kind of thought about it in my head and compared it. And I think it's important to look at how much better we are than we were last year. And most of my analysis honestly comes from the offensive side of things. I think we are 10 times better on the offensive side of the ball than we were last year. When I look at our starting 5 and when I look at the guys we have coming off the bench, when I look at our experience, when I look at our talent, we are better every which way. I think the main one of the biggest reasons why I think we're better than we were last year is because I think last year we relied way too much on this star-studded freshman class that we expected to come in, and now we only have one of those guys on the roster, or one of those guys on the team. I guess the Pierce guy still on the team. But when I think about the freshman class last year, I think of the main 3 of Lamoth, Kaiser, and I think of Deshaun Harris-Smith. And I think we relied way too much, or we thought that we were going to be able to rely way too much on those youth and those younger guys, when in reality, those guys weren't ready to take on those roles. Jonathan Lamoth didn't play much. Jamie Kaiser played, but he wasn't great. He wasn't great. His main attribute was shooting the ball, and he wasn't shooting the ball that well last year. We saw flashes of it. And even Deshaun Harris-Smith, he was our starting guard. We needed somebody in that position. He was really our 2 guard next to Jameer Young. We needed somebody in that position that was really going to be able to help take off the pressure of Jameer Young. And I think that main difference, looking at this year's team, we don't have to rely on any young guy that I think isn't ready. We do have a young guy that we are pretty reliant on and is a really good player. I do love the surrounding pieces, but we're going to rely on Derek Queen sometimes. I still think he's our best player. I think he's come down to earth a little bit since that first performance, but I think out of talent, just purely talent speaking, I think he's probably our best player, but he's a guy that is like already one of the better players in the Big Ten. I remember I saw an expert make a ranking, and I think he had all the freshmen like as the top players in the Big Ten. Like he had Queen, he had the 2 Rutgers guys, both in his top 5 players in the Big Ten. And I thought honestly, I thought that was fair. And I think Derek Queen, what he is, he's ready to take on a role as one of the top players on a really good college basketball team. Deshaun, Kaiser, Lamoth, those guys weren't ready to take on that role. And I think we are not dependent on one player. I can't say that there's one guy. I don't know who every night it's going to be. I thought maybe Derek Queen had a chance to be like a consistent, like 18-point scorer, but even him, I'm like, he can have an off night because we have a bunch of other guys I feel really good about. Where last year, it was completely the opposite of that. It was Jameer Young all the time. It was all about Jameer Young. And this year, I can't be like, oh, it's all about Gillespie, or oh, it's all about Derek Queen, or oh, it's all about Julian Reese, or oh, it's all about Deshaun. No, it feels like there's like seven guys of really five guys that I feel like are really solid that any given night can drop 20 points. I think there's 4 or 5 guys that any game can really go off. Specifically, I think of Gillespie. I think of our two bigs. I think of Rodney Rice and Selton Miguel. Last game showed that. Well, I think people had question marks about him, but I think that we have 5 guys that can truly go for 20 any night. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Like, look at it. Julian Reese can go for 20 any night. We just saw him go for 20. We know what he can do. He's been one of the better bigs in the Big Ten. We know he can put up big numbers. He's good for a double-double every single game, just about. We know Derek Queen can put up 20, 25 any night and have a huge rebounding night and make a ton of impact. We know Jacoby Gillespie can do that. We've seen what he can do as a scorer. And if he starts shooting the 3 ball a little bit more efficiently, he can shoot the ball. He just hasn't shot the ball super efficiently to start the season. It hasn't been horrible, but I think a little bit more efficiently, he can drop 20 any night. We saw Rodney Rice drop, what was it, like 22 and 1/2? And then I think the same thing goes for Selton Miguel. We saw him last game turn up and have his best game as a Terp. He can drop 20 any night. And that balance that we have this year, I think, is really going to allow us to take the next step as a team, and be able to really win later on in the year when games matter. So I think we're so much more balanced, which I think is important in college basketball. College basketball is less about the stars. It's less about the stars. The stars are what's going to get the views up. The stars are what people are going to be looking at. But a lot of it, what wins in March is experience and balanced teams that have guys that can do different things. 5 guys on their team that can get 20 any night. That's what wins in March. It's not about having a star, a 1 star that's going to go in the top 15 in the NBA. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about having more balance. The NBA is more star driven. In college basketball, it's more about having a balanced roster. I think we also have way more depth than last year. And I think maybe the biggest reason why we're better is we can shoot the ball this year. I feel really good. Rodney Rice's stroke looks money. A really nice stroke. He might be our best shooter on the team. I think that's entirely possible. And last year, we know we didn't have anyone in our starting lineup that I was like, yeah, he's a really good shooter. This year, I feel like we have 3 guys that could argue, even though we haven't completely seen it yet. We have 3 guys that I feel are really good shooters. I guess Deshaun Harris-Smith is still starting. I think Rodney Rice is definitely going to be starting. Marquette game, maybe. They might want to continue to bring Rodney Rice off the bench, but Rodney Rice is not like he might be considered not as coming off the bench, but he's like, I consider him a starter right now. Right now, to me, it's Rodney, Selton, and Jacoby Gillespie as the 3 guards, and then of course Queen and Reese down low. But all 3 of those guys, Rice, Miguel, and Gillespie, can all shoot the ball at a really high level. And I think all 3 of those guys weren't, or I know that all 3 of those guys weren't here last year, but I think they'd also be, all 3 of those guys would have been our best shooters on our team last year, to be completely honest. And so I feel like we space the ball, we space the perimeter so much more. And at the end of the day, a lot of people say this about basketball. It comes down to if you're going to make or miss the shots. And last year we couldn't make the shots. And so that really hurt us, where this year I feel like we have a lot of guys that can shoot the ball. So I really do believe that Maryland basketball is drastically better. And I think we've seen it in these first 3 games. I think it's the first time in history they said that Maryland's won 3 straight to start the season with 30-point victories. So, I mean, I'm not going to overreact to beating Manhattan, but I do think that when we talk about Maryland's team compared to last year and what we can accomplish, I think it's a lot. It's 2 different teams, and I think this year we are so much better. It took me a little bit to realize last year that we had some problems, but this year I see a pretty complete team. Not perfect, but I do see a pretty complete team for the Terps. Let's talk about Rodney Rice. I honestly think he can be as good as anybody on our team. I'll talk about that after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think Rodney Rice is really a huge key this year to what Maryland basketball can accomplish. What I've seen from Rodney Rice so far this year is somebody that is a really, really, really high-end player. And I don't think people I was saying it this offseason. People were like, yeah, Gillespie, Deshaun, Selton, those guys will be your starting guards. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I've seen Rodney Rice play. I've seen him play in person. I saw him play at Virginia Tech. I know the type of recruit he was coming out of high school. And there was a reason we were pretty upset when we couldn't get this kid, because this guy is exactly what we needed last year. We also need it this year, but he's exactly what we needed last year. A guy that can shoot the ball, that can score on all 3 levels. I wouldn't say he's great anywhere else besides scoring the ball. He's a really good scorer of the basketball, and you need guys like that. Like I said before, at the end of the day, it just comes down, are you making or missing shots? A lot of people say in basketball. But I think that he's decent defensively, a decent rebounder, a decent passer, but he has a chance to be an elite scorer of the basketball. And if you look at his numbers for the first 3 games, he's doing exactly that, being an elite offensive player. He's by the way, he's coming off the bench. I think that's something that we have to recognize. Like I said before, I consider him a starter right now. I know Coach. I keep wanting to say Coach Loxley because we've been talking so much football. We'll talk more about football and why it's a must-win game tomorrow. So make sure you guys tune into that. And subscribe if you're looking for a lot of football news. But I think when I think about Rodney Rice's numbers, like I was talking about, I want to go back to the point about coming off the bench. I'm good with him coming off the bench for now. I'm good with it. If Kevin Willard feels like that's the best way to go about it, if he likes Rodney Rice coming off the bench but still playing starter minutes, I'm okay with that if that's how he feels like Rodney Rice needs to perform. But if there's a time where we feel like he needs to enter the starting lineup, let's not be hesitant. He can easily be a starter, and I think you would have to consider taking Deshaun Harris-Smith out the lineup. And I think when I look at his numbers through the first 3 games, he's averaging 16.7 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 1 assist. And he's shooting 56% from the field. So he's having a really solid year so far, scoring the basketball. And when we looked at it, he had that one game where he almost went for 30. He had 28 points against Mount St. Mary's, and that's when we really saw. And I was like, yeah, this guy can score the basketball because it was effortless. It was like an effortless. He had like 20 by half. It was pretty crazy what he could do while doing it with such a high percentage. He shot 60% from three in that game. Also had 5 rebounds and 2 assists. I think and 2 steals as well. I think what we see from him is just a guy that can just score. And that's what we need. And that's what we lacked last year. We lacked guys that could just score the basketball. Outside of Jameer Young, in our starting lineup, I didn't really feel like we had guys that could just score. When we really think about it, like Julian Reese, sure. Dante Scott, Dante couldn't get much of a shot on his own. Deshaun Harris-Smith couldn't really get a shot on his own. The rest of our roster, Jordan Geronimo was a starter at this point. Couldn't really do much offense at all. Never mind getting just a shot on his own. He wasn't much of an offense player on his own at all. And I think when I look at Rodney Rice, him and Jacoby Gillespie, I think, have a chance to be a really cool backcourt. And this is why I think Maryland basketball has a chance to be really good this year. The thing about it is we shouldn't even have to be backcourt dependent. We don't need those guys to be elite. I think they have a chance to be really good. And reminder, we do get those guys back next year. I think those guys have a chance to be really good in the back end for Maryland basketball. But we're a front court team with Reese and Queen. We are going to rely on those two for a lot of things, and those two guys are going to drive a lot of our action. But if Rodney Rice can be as good as what I've seen so far and as good as I think he can be, it is going to help us a ton, relieve some pressure off those guys, and just create the theme of today, a more balanced team. But what I saw from him shooting wise and what I think he's going to be this year is going to really help us. So far this year, his shooting percentage is in a perfect spot. Shot 41% from three, 56% from the field with 20 minutes of work. I expect those minutes to go up, and they've gone up every single game. So I expect his minutes to continue to go up. But he's an absolute bucket getter, and that's what we need with this team. Him and Jacoby Gillespie both can go create their own shots, can go shoot off the dribble, can shoot off the catch, and they really help us. And I think Selton Miguel too. I don't know. I can add Selton Miguel in that conversation as well. Can do all those things. And that's a big reason why I think we're going to be really good. Like I said, we don't need those guys to be stars. Reese and Queen are probably going to be the stars of the show. But if those guys are really good players, we're going to have a chance to have a really good team and do some things that I didn't even think we were going to be able to do this year. So if we want to take our team to the next level, it's going to be about Rodney Rice, and it's going to be about the rest of those guards. I know I'm kind of leaving out Deshaun Harris-Smith. He's just still struggling to me. He's still not able to. He hasn't shot the three ball well. He hasn't shown me a lot of improvement so far this year, and so I'm still kind of figuring out what he's going to be for us this year. But we're going to need him to improve as well. We know he does a lot of other things well, but we're going to need him to shoot the ball better. But I do think Rodney Rice is a huge key this year. Maryland basketball lost a big commitment. I am concerned about the Maryland basketball 2025 class. Talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Guys, go over to FanDuel if you want to bet on everything. There's so many different things you can bet on right now, from college basketball to the NBA to the NFL. There's so many different things you can bet on right now. So go over to FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Maryland basketball's 2025 class is officially in trouble. So Maryland just lost the commitment from their best recruit in their 2025 class in four-star Marcus Jackson, who just made like a pretty big jump in the 247 rankings, and a lot of people thought had a chance to be a really high-end player. And I thought he was going to be perfect for the Terps because I looked at it and I said, we have Derek Queen this year and we have Julian Reese. Both of those guys could be gone. Both of those guys could be gone, or we know Julian Reese is going to be gone, but Derek Queen could be gone, could be a one and done. I think that's entirely possible. I'm kind of early to kind of feel out what he's going to be. I think Derek Queen definitely has a chance of coming back. I don't think he's like one of those top end one and done just because I think he's a really good college player. I've said that I don't know how he translates to the NBA, but I do think he has a chance at being one and done still. So I thought, okay, if we lose those guys, in comes Marcus Jackson and whoever else we pick up in the portal, and we would be okay. And we just lost a commit from him. And I'm not thinking too much about next year's basketball team, but you always think about the future. I do want to say this. It definitely hurts. Adam Finkelstein, I read the scouting report, thought he was a guy that had a chance to be a really he's a really talented player with a lot of ability, and it hurts to lose him. He said he's extremely bouncy and quick off his feet, athletically, play at the top of his box. And I don't want to talk too much about him as a player anymore because I'm like, we lost him. So it's like there's no need for me to kind of give you guys his rundown anymore because it looks like he's not going to be a Maryland Terrapin. Now, I wonder if he has a chance of recommitting. I don't know about that. There's some others in his other schools that he was considering, Arizona State and Auburn, who were also involved. But it's like Arizona State's not that great right now. And he plays on Team Thrill, which is in Maryland. And he's a Maryland guy. So I was like, I thought he would have a good shot at keeping this kid, but he decided to decommit. And it definitely hurts, like I said. Now we're down to only one commit in that 2025 class, and Christian Jeffrey, who is a guard. And when I project Maryland's team right now and what they'll have next year, we need bigs. Our guards honestly look good. We get most of our guards back besides Seltz and Miguel. Besides Seltz, and I think all of our guards are back. Gillespie is going to be back. Rodney's going to be back. Deshaun's going to be back. We have those guys, and those guys have a chance to play big roles for the Terps next year. And then Malachi Palmer, depending on how he develops, is going to be there. We have guys there. But this is the thing. When you lose commits, it's not the end of the world anymore. It used to really, really, really hurt. But now it's not the end of the world because you can go into the portal and find some really high-level players. Maryland basketball can. You used to not really be able to do that, and used to be a lot harder, and it was more about the guys you recruited. But now it's like it just opens up more spots for you to use the portal. And after what happened with the 2023 class, I'm a little bit scarred. Recruiting is not always easy. It's like you can go into the portal and get guys that you know are good, that are established as good, and get some of those guys. And that can be a good thing. But I think this Marcus Jackson guy was a top 60 type of recruit that we definitely wanted to see play for the Maryland Terrapins. Now, I don't really know if there's anyone else out there that we could possibly pick up. I'll be interested to see if there's another name out there that we possibly get. But for now, our 2025 class is down to one commit. Christian Jeffrey, who a lot of people are really high on. They think he's a lot of intangibles like leadership and those different things. But I do want to say I want to land another guy. You definitely want more than one commit in your freshman class. But as it gets later and later, it gets harder and harder because there's just not that many guys that are not committed to schools yet. So we'll see what happens with everything. But I do want to say it does hurt that we lost Marcus Jackson, and I do think that class is in trouble. Less in trouble because I talked about with the transfer portal and you're still able to get guys, but I still think that class is in trouble. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.